I have previously discussed Brahmacharya on this channel, and if you don't remember what it is, the word might be translated as chastity or celibacy. But that's not a literal translation. If we translate it literally, we have to take the two parts of the word Brahman and Charya. And what does that mean? The first part is a reference to God or holiness, and the second, way, path, or conduct. And the beautiful thing about this aspect of the Indian spiritual tradition is that it breaks down for us 8 specific ways in which you can lose your godly conduct or celibate or chaste conduct. Now, if you wish to retain your seed, you must take that project on holistically. It's not only a matter of did the semen leave your body or didn't it. However, you may consider that a byproduct, the literal retention of your seed. You may view as a byproduct of your godly conduct. So let's look at what that isn't. What constitutes a break in chaste godliness? There are 8 ways distinguished for us here. Number 1, do not look at women with desire. In St. Paul's first letter to the church at Thessalonica, where I am blessed to live, in fact, the first divine liturgy ever served in Europe, as I've mentioned before, was just maybe 800 meters above my home, where St. Paul himself served the very first divine liturgy on European soil in the history of the world. So then later he wrote to this church, which he himself had planted here in Thessalonica, that church which continues to this day. It is an apostolic territory, if you will, and has not lost the grace of the apostolic faith. It has retained the true faith, the true religion of the one Holy Orthodox Catholic and Apostolic Church, founded by Jesus Christ himself. So, what does he write in his first epistle to the Thessalonians, chapter 4? He says the phrase lust of concupiscence, which he distinguishes as what it is not to possess your vessel with honor. And that means that the lust of concupiscence, which is a desire for sexual immorality, a desire for ungodly sexual activity, that's what's behind this particular idea of a break in Brahmacharya, or a break in chastity. Do not look at women with desire. They call that darshan. So, to look at a woman is inevitable. You're a man, you live on the earth, and women do too. No surprise there. So you may look at women as a natural course of simply being alive here on the earth and being present where women are. You may look at them with love. Saint Pelagia became a magnificent holy woman, but before that, she was known as a prostitute, a very wealthy, very beautiful prostitute. And once a bishop in the early church, a holy man, looked upon her. When other churchmen would avert their gaze, he looked upon her with love, and he said, "Oh, I have not cared for the beauty of my soul, for the purity of my soul, for my holiness, as well as this woman has looked after the beauty of her body." That chaste look, that look of love, that look with humility so as to see the truth of the matter, was so profound that By virtue of this holy man's loving kindness and his prayer, Saint Pelagia was so moved that she came back to him. She was repentant, and then she lived a life of profound spiritual transformation. Saint Pelagia became a great saint. And what opened for her the doorway to the kingdom of heaven was a man who looked upon her, but with love and humility and with patience, not accusing her of anything, but rather accusing himself. So this is an example of godly conduct. He looked upon a woman, but not with desire. Number 2, do not touch women or allow them to caress or massage you. Sparshan, it's called. So my monastic friends who live on the holy mountain of Athos don't always live there 100% of the time, but some of them do. Some of them are so careful with themselves, with their bodies and souls, that they wish to totally avoid any physical contact with women in any way. And of course, if they had to go to a doctor, they would only be treated by a man. If they needed a therapeutic massage, they would only receive it from a male therapist. This is a radical approach, but Saint Seraphim of Sarov, while a young monk, was living in a great Russian monastery that had proximity to not only lay women, but also nuns who would visit and dine with the monks on a semi-regular basis. But as a young monastic, he would seclude himself so far away from them that it was impossible that they would even brush against him. Now, this radical approach to celibacy you may wish to adopt. No one says you must, but you may wish to adopt it. And this, in the Indian sense of Brahmacharya, to be touched, caressed, or massaged by a woman, would be a break in Brahmacharya. I'm not saying it's sinful. What I'm saying is the Indian tradition distinguishes that when the body of a man, or even the gaze of a man, connects with a woman in a desiring way, the semen which ought to blend throughout his blood separates out from it so as to prepare for an ejaculation. And even if he retains his seed, his look of desire or being touched by a woman sensually, or even therapeutically, alters his biochemistry such that his power of prayer, his ability to contain his desiring faculty unto the end of godliness. Remember, Brahmacharya means God way, God path, godly conduct. That way could be derailed by looking upon a woman with desire or allowing her to touch him in any sensual, caressing, or massaging way. This would include even, for example, having a woman cut his hair or wash his feet. So, moving to number 3. 3, do not play with, flirt with, or joke with women. Now you may begin to consider sexual dynamics in the sphere of dating or romantic, sexual, sensual chemistry. You know, women like to be flirted with, they like to be played with, they like to be teased, joked with. If you can treat a woman like she's your little sister, like she's your annoying little sister, of course, in a way that is loving, but also playful and teasing, they adore it and it turns them on sexually very, very, very much. When a man engages that way intentionally with a woman, they call it Kelly. Probably not after John Travolta's wife. This is an old Sanskrit word. But that flirting, playing, joking way of being with a woman, that also shifts a man's biochemistry such that his sexual energies are no longer directed into erotic, intimate congress with the divine, but instead his body is prepared for erotic, intimate congress with a woman. And again, the semen is no longer then wedded to the blood, which is to say the desiring faculty no longer supports the heart and spirit in the mission of prayer, in the mission of devotion, in the mission of the continual remembrance of God. so as to enter into paradise while yet in the body. And so that's the third break in Brahmacharya, or chastity. The fourth, do not extol the qualities of women. The word they use for that is kirtan. That word kirtan can also be used, by the way, for a devotional chant. So what is being said by that word kirtan, which could also be used for a holy song, by the way? What we're to understand is you must not extol the beauty of women with your lips. You should not sing about how pretty they are, speak about how pretty they are, either in your own thoughts to another man or certainly to a woman, because again, that alters the biochemistry, taking a man out of the inward possibility, out of the inward potential of union with God as his total focus. And again, the body is going to be preparing itself for the eventuality of an ejaculation, and even if that ejaculation never occurs, that shift in him inwardly, wherein the semen is pulled away from the blood towards the testes, his energy and attention then is moving downward rather than circulating throughout him, and his wholeness may be compromised by that flirting, playing, teasing, joking, which is, of course, generally speaking, a necessary prelude to a romantic encounter. If you meet a woman on the street, you need to be able to play with her, tease her, flirt with her, enjoy her in a way that she understands their sexual interest. So this principle is saying, don't do that. Number 5, do not spend time with a woman alone in private. Do not speak with her one-on-one. Obviously, if you seclude yourself away with a woman, you may know pickup artists always teach isolate. If a girl that you want to be with is with her friend group, isolate her away from them. Get the one-on-one connection. This is saying, don't do that. Because that is yet another way to violate chastity. And you're going to, by that alone, reduce your odds of long-term semen retention. And remember, the Brahmacharya, the one with a vow of celibacy, is focused on 0 ejaculations forever. None, absolutely none ever. And not only that, but the one with such a vow is focused on erotic union with the divine eros, loving desire. The Orthodox saints use the word eros, the Greek word eros, which in English we connect to the word erotic, which usually means something sexual between a man and a woman. In Holy Orthodoxy, the word eros, or erotic, is a reference to the chaste union of the soul, the body, the spirit, the heart with God himself, with very God of very God. It's meant to dwell on the throne of our hearts. As the Lord said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So this is all about being prepared, being ready to be a vessel for divine grace. The energy and the attention must not flow outward so as to penetrate or be with a woman in a sexual way, even prior to the sexual act, in order for the inward state, physiologically, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, to be organized and oriented towards the cultivation of his own virtue, so as to be of service to God devotionally entirely. And that means refraining from this devotional or moving sexually or sensually with a woman. And that's called ganya. Number 6, do not choose to have sex with a woman. That's called sankalpa. This is very interesting. The principle does not say do not have sex with a woman, although we'll get to that later. It says do not choose to have sex with a woman. Now, if you are an unmarried man and you wish to live in chastity, you wish to live in celibacy, You wish to devote yourself to intimacy with God as though you were a monk prior to your marriage. This would apply. The very choice. This is a noetic movement of the heart. It may not include at this point any movement of the body at all, but just the choice, the intention to have sex with a woman. You could be living on the holy mountain of Athos. You could be living in the wilderness all by yourself and never leave. But if in your mind's eye, you see yourself choosing the possibility of a sexual encounter, choosing it even as an intention. You may be reading literature written by pickup artists. You may be watching videos about dating online. All the while you may not notice, but you may well have made a choice to have sex with a woman. That is a break in chaste conduct. That is a break in Brahmacharya. 7. Do not draw near to a woman for sexual gratification. Ajavasya is what that's called. Now, many years ago, I had a friend who had been addicted to seeing prostitutes before he was married. Now, I knew him as a married man who was faithful to his wife, but I knew him well and spent many hours with him. Strangely, I would notice every so often he would go online and he would print out an ad for a prostitute and just leave it on the printer tray when his wife wasn't home, naturally. Now, I don't believe, because I knew him well and we spent so many hours together, I don't believe he was ever physically cheating on his wife. What he was doing, however, was taking some of his old steps down the path to sexual congress with a prostitute. He wasn't actually doing it, but he was moving in that direction. Think of Amsterdam. You may have heard of the famous red light district there, where the pretty ladies stand in store windows and then men walk by. Now, I assure you, many men walk by, maybe even with their wives and girlfriends, and they never actually enter in, or they may, but perhaps many of them don't actually go in to partake in any physical activity, but they're seeking it. They are physically making a movement, or they're making a phone call of curiosity. They're the movement towards this activity, even if it doesn't end up in any sexual activity at all, even if it never ends in an ejaculation, that's still a violation of chaste conduct. That is still a surrender of one's inward devotion to the Lord Jesus by moving one's attention, one's soul, one's body, even one's voice on the phone, or by speaking to a woman so as to attract her near, or moving towards her physically so as maybe to touch her, or to in some way demonstrate attractiveness or interest. All of those movements, those are not chaste, those are not celibate, not in the sense of Brahmacharya, which means godly conduct. Remember, we're not just talking about no penis and vagina occurred, no ejaculation occurred, no masturbation occurred. We're not talking about that yet. We're saying even moving in that direction, whether with the mind, the body, the interest, the attention, all of this is a violation of chastity in the sense of godly conduct. And again, it would alter the biochemistry. That is to say, the semen would be pulled out of the blood, the energy moves downward. The body is preparing for an ejaculation, even if it does not. And that means that the direction inwardly, and remember, the kingdom of God is within you, said our Lord. Ye are gods, small g, who may become God, capital G, by grace. So this movement is a movement away from the Lord, and it is a movement away from yourself. Number 8, do not engage in sexual activity. Kriya nivriti. I beg your pardon if my Sanskrit pronunciation leaves much to be desired. I suppose it does. That word in Sanskrit effectively means giving up. What does that mean? Well, it means at this point, if we're talking about actually doing it, and what do they mean by doing it? This would be self-pleasuring. This could be with a member of the same sex or the opposite sex. It could be an ejaculation or no. But chaste conduct, celibate conduct, Brahmacharya, chastity in the service of holiness, in the service of the divine, at this level. This is a sort of monastic level, or for married people, there may be a period of 40 days. It's quite common and traditional for holy, pious Orthodox Christian couples to spend all of Great Lent, 40 days a year or 47 days a year, or some shorter period away from each other. So even married people may practice this Brahmacharya approach. You may practice it for a period before you're married. You may have had a breakup. You may need to take upon this practice, or take this practice upon yourself. But on the practice can rest your prayer. And of course, sexual activity would preclude that. And remember, we haven't even spoken about an ejaculation. Not one of these 8 breaks in Brahmacharya actually mentions ejaculation. These are, if you will, the meta principles of semen retention. Not one of them actually requires an ejaculation. In other words, you can break your chastity for the sake of God, your Brahmacharya, by any one of these ways. I'll read them all once again, 1 through 8. 1. Do not look at a woman with desire. 2. Do not touch women or allow them to caress or massage you. 3. Do not play with, flirt with, or joke with women. 4. Do not extol the qualities of women. 5. Do not spend time with a woman in private. 6. Do not choose to have sex with a woman. 7. Do not draw near to a woman for sexual gratification. 8. Do not engage in sexual activity with yourself or anyone else. These are the 8 breaks of Brahmacharya, the 8 violations of chastity. And if you wish to have ultimate long-term semen retention, or even radical chastity for a time, you must look along these 8 principles. They're, if you will, a continuum. And the side benefit, now I lived in this way, more or less, on the holy mountain of Athos. No ejaculation occurred while I was there. And for many days after, getting way past 500 days was, dare I say, easy. But it was easy because in that monastic environment, I had adopted this way of being. And you may adopt it wherever you are. I live in the city now. But it's still possible to live this way if you choose to. There are plenty of monks in Russia who don't live on Mount Athos, who have proximity to women because women visit Russian monasteries all the time. They can still practice this chaste conduct. They can still control themselves and have the retention of their seed, therefore, become a part of what they can offer to the Lord. This is what St. Paul's getting at when he says to possess your vessel in sanctification and honor. By the way, if you're interested in semen retention, it may seem rigorous, but I promise you this is the easy way to do it. Not the hard way, this is the easy way. So if you wish to know the easy way to semen retention long term, this is it.